Good day to you, sir. I'm Nestor Jarel Armorin, and I'm here in front of you to discuss Chapter 3, Evidence in Crime. Now, let us proceed to the next slide. Lesson 1, Evidence. When we hear the meaning of evidence, it means sanctioned by these rules of ascertaining the judicial proceeding the truth and respecting a matter of fact. So the purpose of evidence is it will persuade the court. And there are three types of evidence, namely oral testimony, documentary, and circumstantial evidence. When we hear the word oral testimony, this refers to a person or us human beings, because us human beings can serve as a great evidence because we can testify of what we see in the crime scene. Second, documentary usually refers to written documents. Third, circumstantial evidence. This type of evidence is usually will collect more information in order to create a strong evidence. And evidence, all the mean by which any knowledge of matter of fact, it means the truth will be investigated. And depending of the outcome, trial will be established or the trial will be disapproved. Furthermore, evidence will relate to investigation because what we will get from the investigation is we can use that as an evidence to bring up to the court. Three forms of evidence in criminal investigation. First of all, we have physical evidence, object, autoptic, or real evidence. Refers to physical object used as evidence that is obtained through searches at the crime scene. An example of that is weapon, blood, hair, fiber, and other physical object. Category of physical evidence. We have associative evidence, are pieces of evidence which link a person to a crime. Second, tracing evidence. Evidences that may assist the investigator in locating the suspect. So the difference between the two is associative evidence, the keyword for that is to link a person to a crime. An example of that is the fingerprint of the offender, which will link for whoever committed the crime. Second, tracing evidence. Tracing evidence is the set of ideas because the crime can be passed of one person to another. An example of that is rape. Usually in rape, there are pubic hair of the offender will be left behind, and that pubic hair can be used to trace the rapist. Biological and transient evidence. Biological evidence. Evidence that is commonly recovered in a crime scene, which is the DNA. An example of that is body fluids, tissues, blood, semen, and other facial material. Second, transient evidence. So the easy meaning of this is that if an evidence is not protected quickly or secured, it will lose its value. An example of that is blood in the rain. If the investigator will not act quickly, the value of the blood will be lost. Other specific kinds of physical evidence. We have soil. This usually refers to flowers, minerals, rocks, and others. Paint. Third, tool mark. This usually refers to fingerprint of having a physical touch to physical object. Fourth, shoe prints and impression. Fifth, videotape evidence. This type of physical evidence is the most powerful because it will save or capture the crime that is committed. 6. Dental evidence. This can also be handy because usually in a crime scene there are bite marks, and this can help to measure the width of the bite and to know if there's a missing tooth. 7. Computer and other electronic evidence. This type of evidence can be useful because this can locate the communication of the criminal and will know what is their and to know what they are planning. 2. Testimonial evidence. It is also known as eyewitness testimony or communicative evidence. A product of interview and interrogation which 5 senses of the witness, which are sight, smell, taste, hearing, and physical touch, are being described through oral and written testimony. Kinds of testimonial evidence. First of all, we have ordinary witness and expert witness. The difference between these two witnesses is that ordinary witness is those witnesses who have low knowledge or having no information, while expert witness are those people who have special knowledge that can be useful in evidence. Who is the witness? A person who testify under oath in a trial or disposition of lawsuit. What is deposition? It is a testimony taken orally with an attorney asking question and the deponent. Lastly, documentary evidence, which refers to writing or official records. Lesson 2. Legal classification of evidence. First of all, we have direct evidence. It proves that the fact without the aid of any inference or presumption. Second, circumstantial evidence or indirect evidence. Inferred as necessary or probable consequences. Following requisite must be present in order to become sufficient for conviction. A. More than one circumstances. B. Fact must be proven. C. All circumstances must be beyond reasonable doubt. So, for us to easily understand is that direct evidence, an example of that is the CCTV. Because the CCTV can capture the crime. An example of that is the CCTV capture Mario killing Maria. And it will not be difficult because the face of Mario was seen and it saw that he was killing Maria. While circumstantial evidence, it will first collect facts or more information for the facts to be proven. And after the facts are proven, it will compile and create one strong evidence which will be beyond reasonable doubt. Degree of value in establishing a disputed fact of an evidence. First of all, we have prima facie evidence, conclusive evidence, corroborative evidence, and cumulative evidence. Suffice for the proof of particular fact, evidence is incontrovertible, evidence is different kind and character, and evidence is the same kind and character. Weight and acceptability of an evidence. Primary or best evidence. And secondary or substitutionary evidence. So, for us to easily understand this is that primary is the best evidence or having the powerful fact that can be useful in the court, while secondary is the opposite of having inferior fact that cannot be handy in the court. Nature of an evidence. First of all, we have object evidence or physical evidence. Second, documentary evidence, which are written instrument. 3. Testimonial evidence or oral evidence. 4 and 5, positive and negative evidence. So the difference between the two is that positive refers to the witness of having high knowledge of the crime scene, while negative evidence is the opposite of the witness having no knowledge in the crime scene. Quality of an evidence. It must be relevant evidence or the evidence must relate to the issue or the crime. Second, material evidence. This usually refers to physical evidence. 3. Admissible evidence. It means that the evidence must be valid. And lastly, credible evidence. It means that the evidence must be believable. Lesson 3. Collecting, marking, tagging, and preserving evidence. In the process of investigation, the responding team should be knowledgeable because a team must have knowledge on how to secure and protect the evidences. Collecting physical evidence, which involves blood, hair, fingernail scraping, fiber, glass, firearms, bullet, cartridge case, and seminal stain. First of all, we have blood. This can be usually found in assault, robberies, and other cases where blood will be spilled or the offenders are getting cut from a sharp object. So here's some ways of how to collect liquid blood. First of all, use clean, disposable pipette or eyedropper for each sample collected. B. Place the sample in a container, avoiding airspace because air will cause the blood to dry. C. If the amount of blood is minimal, collection may best be made by placing the sample in a normal saline solution. 1 tablespoon of salt in quarts of distilled water. D. Refrigerate sample in the saline solution as soon as possible. E. Do not mix areas where samples are collected. F. Above all, avoid contaminating the sample by reusing collection tools. So when collecting dried blood is, first of all, on absorbent surfaces, bring in the entire object or cut out the stained area and bring to the laboratory. On non-absorbent surfaces, scrape up the sample and place in container or if possible, submit the entire article. C. If sample is scraped from surface, also scrape a portion of the surface where no blood is present and submit in a separate container for control in case some substance on the surface causes difficulty in tests. When collecting wet blood on clothing is do not fold the clothing as it may destroy the stain pattern. Do not package while the stain is still wet. Allow the clothing to dry in a room before packaging. And do not expose to sunlight or high temperature as they may destroy factors which will determine blood typing. Hair. Hair usually can be found in anywhere in the crime scene. And here's some ways on how to collect hair. Take sample of head hair from the top, the back, and each side of the head. Take by combing, pulling, or cutting to close it. And take at least a dozen of hair from each location. In rape cases, take 2 examples from both the victim and the suspect. The first is taken by combing and the second is by cutting and pulling. Each of these samples should be collected in separate container and properly labeled. Identify hair carefully as to exact location found. Do not mix hair found in several locations. Place the hair in folded paper and put it in an envelope in glass, vial, and seal. And do not tape the hair to an object as it will alter the hair and destroy any debris adhering to it. Fingernail scraping. This usually can be found when physical touch or assault involved. And here's some way on how to collect fingernail. First of all, clean each fingernail with a clean fingernail file. Place the scraping from each finger on already labeled paper with notation of which finger it came from. C. Place the scraping from each finger in a separate envelope or glass vial. D. Fingernail scraping should be obtained from both the victim and the suspect. E. If the subject hand is contaminated with blood, note this on the container. Fiber. Fiber can be usually found in the clothing. So here's some way of how to collect fiber. First of all, treat and package fibers in the same manner as hair. Be extremely careful not to cross-contaminate during the collection. C. Collect the clothing which is considered to be the source of the fibers. D. Do not shake the item as this may dislodge the fibers. Glass. Glass can be usually found in robberies. So here's some ways how to collect glass. Collect from each broken glass at the crime scene. Package them individually in glass vials or envelopes. In hit-and-run cases, collect all broken glasses to ensure the possibility of physical match should fragments be found on suspect vehicles. Firearm. Firearm is the most vital evidence that can be found in the crime scene. And here's some way on how to collect it. Firearm must be handled carefully, not only as a safety measure, but to avoid disturbing any evidence they may provide. B. They must be properly marked for later identification. C. Never insert anything in the barrel as it may damage the identifying characteristic and dislodge material which may be inside the barrel. Pick up the weapon by the trigger guard or checker grip so as not to disturb any fingerprints. Unload but do not wipe or clean the weapon. When unloading, carefully record the location of fired, unfired, and misfired cartridges. G. Record the serial number description of the firearm. H. Firearm with no serial number should be marked with initial on the receiver on the underside of the barrel. I. Never use X or other non-individual typing of marking. J. Do not mark the weapon on any easily removable part such as the stock grip. Key. Use discretion so as not to disfigure the weapon. Then, here is the don't of collecting firearm. A. Never submit a loaded gun to the laboratory unless it is delivered in person. B. Never clean the bore chamber or cylinder before submitting a firearm and never attempt to fire the gun before it is examined in the laboratory. C. Never pick up weapon by placing a pencil or other object in the end of the barrel. D. Record serial number, make, model, and caliber of the weapon. E. Place weapons in strong cardboard or wooden boxes, well packed to prevent shifting of gun in transit. F. Rifle or shotgun should not be taken apart. G. If blood or any other material which may pertain to an investigation is present on the gun, place a clean paper around the gun and seal it with tape to prevent movement of the gun and loss of the sample during shipment. H. Never contaminate the gun for the examination of latent fingerprints. Bullet. Bullet can be usually found if it is misfired. Collection of bullet. A. Handle the bullet so as not to dissolve any extraneous materials or damage the markings. B. If a bullet is lodged in a wood or similar material, cut out the lesson and bring it to the laboratory. C. At Autospice, request the use of hands or rubber tip forceps to minimize the possibility of damage to the bullet. D. Wrap each bullet separately in tissue and cotton to prevent damage and place in a container. 8. Cartridge cage. This evidence can be useful to identify what weapon is used. So, collection of cartridge case is handle cartridge case so as not to add any scratches or marks. B. Wrap each one separately to prevent damage. C. Be sure to note specific location in which was found. Lastly, seminal stains can be usually found in cloth, blankets, or in rape scene. So this is the way on how to collect seminal stain. First of all, allow any stain to air dry, wrap in paper, and package evidence in paper bags. Do not use plastic bags. For sex-offense cases, the victim should always be examined by a physician. C. Label all garments such as undershirt, panties, or other exhibit and package each garment separately. D. If damp, allow fabric to dry completely before packaging. E. handle fabric as little as possible. So, marking of physical evidence. So, the investigator will mark the initial of the evidence. So, here are the general rules in marking tools or object as physical evidence. Is first, mark with initial of recovering officer. Second, never use X. Third, record any serial number if applicable and other distinctive mark. Fourth, mark the object without damage. Fifth, always mark the container in which the object is placed even if object itself is already marked. Sixth, when tags are used, make corresponding entry in the tag and attach it securely to the object. Marking of firearms-related evidence, such as revolvers, pistol, rifles, fired empty shells, bullets, slug, balls, or pellets. So, here is the way on how to mark weapons. When, in terms of revolver, it must be marked in the barrel, in the frame, butt, cylinder. 2. Pistol must be marked in cylinder, magazine, and barrel. Rifle must be marked in barrel, frame, magazine, and bolt or slide. Fired empty shell and misfired cartridges must be marked near the mouth. Fifth, bullet, slug, ball, pellets must be marked on the nose or in the base. C. Tagging evidence. All evidence which by their nature could not be marked to each surface such as blood, hair, fibers, and the like are properly stored in an appropriate container. Since this evidence cannot be marked, they must be sealed in a safe container. Preserving physical evidence. So, preserving physical evidence is usually done by a SOCO team, and this is their way on how to preserve the physical evidence. First is preservation of tool marks. Second, preservation of controlled substances and medical preparation. Third, preservation of question documents. And fourth, preservation of latent fingerprints. So, there are three types of fingerprint that can be found in a crime scene. First of all, we have latent fingerprint. Second, patent fingerprint. Third, plastic fingerprints. So, here is the example of latent fingerprint. Latent fingerprint is not visible to our eyes. An example of that is the fingerprint in the phone. If we see it in a different angle, we can see the fingerprint. Patent fingerprint. This can be usually get from grease or blood. And lastly, plastic fingerprint. An example of that is pressing hard to the soap, which will leave a fingerprint mark. Lesson 4. General rules and equipment and processing evidence. So, general rules in the collection and preservance of biological material is the use of protective gloves, avoid coughing or sneezing on the evident materials, packaging of biological materials, and special precautions. Acceptable packaging container depending on the type of evidence include paper bag, plastic bags, boxes, sturdy cardboard, manila envelopes, small glass vials, and metal cans. Acceptable seals that are the tamper-proof evidence tape, reinforced packaging tape, and heat seal. Information on each package should be minimally include name of the agency, agency case number, item number, date, and the investigator identifier. Additionally, packaging of evidence should include where the item was found, by whom, date and time found, and description of the item. So, traditional methods of preserving or recording evidence that are photographs, audio, videotape, microfilm, voice tracing, etc. Second is sketching. 3 is observation. 4 is mankind method. 5th is preservation in the mind of the witness. 6 is written notes of what you have seen or what you have observed. 7th is developing and lifting fingerprint found at the crime scene. 8. Gathering physical evidence. 9. Plaster cast. And lastly, the 10th is written statement of subject and witnesses in terms of integrity of trace evidence. That means protection of trace from loss of contamination is essential. Second is, what is the principle of chain custody? It means that evidence passes through several persons for several purposes. Third, what is the chain of custody rule? It means that it is the paramount importance to any investigation. And lastly, what does chain of custody do? The chain of custody proves the integrity of piece of the evidence. So that is all, sir. Thank you for watching and God bless.